Welcome to Modern Explorer. As you know, I'm Mateo Arruejo. And joining me, we have a Joe. And Joe actually, he contacted me a little bit after the documentary came out because he recognized the area and the environment. And he said he had his own experiences in this area at a place called NORAD, which is a military base here. So I'm just going to have Joe, since he's here with us right now, kind of like just take it away and, tell us about the experiences and what happened. Hey, Joe, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Tell me and the audience a little bit about yourself so they get an idea.
Well, I joined the Air Force in 1985, and I went in as a guaranteed job, and I was being a security policeman, so I was all excited. I went through basic training at Lackland Air Force Base, and my tech school was at Lackland for security police. Then I went on leave. Then I reported to Falcon Air Force Station in Colorado Springs, just right out of Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. And I spent a couple months at Falcon Air Force Station as just a newbie, and a couple of months there. And then myself and another 15 of us got shipped to work at Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station, or Air Force Complex, it was called, in NORAD. And we got there in early '86. I got there in early '86, and then we trained, and we were working security at NORAD basically, and that was the beginning of '86, and somewhere like in March or April of '86, during we paid attention to Libya and Mr. Muammar Gaddafi at the time, and we sent them over some missiles, I remember, and then we started checking IDs about a mile down the access road. We just made a checkpoint, essentially, just checking IDs, and at first they gave us a Caterpillar to warm up at night, because there was nothing out there. There was a parking lot to the south, and to the north was Denver.
Yeah.
And I'm looking straight down in the valley there,
Mm-hmm.
up by 25 on that access road. And we could see the cars come up about a mile away, and we would get out of the Caterpillar that we used to keep warm. We would turn on the heater, and just otherwise we'd just be there with nothing on us except, we were armed and such. We were security police. So definitely that was just months after I got there that I think about it, 1986. And
So before you continue a little bit, can you tell us like what NORAD is, so people understand like that this is a really highly secure base. In fact, probably one of the most secure bases in the world, I would say.
absolutely. Actually, ironic, President Trump just made what was then Space Command into Space Force. Now it made it its own separate entity now, which he just passed, and it was basically Space Command. And so NORAD, it's no, everybody knows NORAD was built in the '50s, and it's inside Cheyenne Mountain, and it was essentially the eyes or the ears of our defense system. So in case the big nukes were coming our way, we had a station where we would go in, and because it protected a whole Space Command, protected all the United States, and we knew what maybe I don't know, but yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah, no. Yeah, you're right. It's the North American Aerospace Defense Command.
There you go.
And it was jointly with Canada in order to be able to foresee like incoming nukes and other types of, like you said, like the eyes and ears for what may be approaching the United States and Canada. And so it's like, so it's one of the most secure bases that's ever been built, and it's like literally built inside this mountain called Cheyenne Mountain, and it's heavily protected by, like guards like you, the police.
Absolutely. We had control points everywhere going in. Um, and, I worked there. It was just an everyday thing for me. But looking back, as you say, absolutely the most secured, buttoned down installation of its type. And it's very unique. It's the only one in the world like that, I believe. Built in a mountain and made to take a certain amount of nuclear blow. And but it was a lot of fun working there, I must say. So I'll get back to it. So we started post 6. I remember climbing into the Caterpillar. It was middle of the night because my shift started at 11. I worked the midnight shift. We worked 3 swings, 24-hour break, 3 mids, and 3 days off, I love that schedule. 3 days off. And so I climbed in the Caterpillar, turned down the heat because it's cold. It was April, May, right around there. And then, so you just sit back and try to keep vigilant. Look, the cars coming up. And when it sounded like a rock hit the spade of this Caterpillar, this earth mover. And that caught my attention. Well, what was that? And a little further down the night, once again, clank. So this thing had floodlights on its top, so I turned on the floodlights, and that's when I saw the spade in front of me, and right in front of the spade, I saw all these rocks that were about as big as my palm, and I noticed, and maybe I thought maybe they were the ones that are being thrown at us or thrown at me. But I think nothing of it. I wasn't fearful or this or that, and I would see them come in with the lights on and off, and we in the back of my head, I just rationalized there was somebody, just some people out there that were not too happy with our military base there and this and that. I was thinking, and we've apprehended poachers that will go in there and poach turkeys and such. In the back of my head, I was saying maybe there was those guys coming back and messing around with us. But that continued on. That was 86, and then they got rid of the Caterpillar and they gave us a little mobile little house that they parked in the middle of this 2-lane highway, and we were checking IDs then, and it was pretty known fact that this was going on, that someone would throw rocks at our sentry down there. That a flight, there was 3 flights. The flight that worked days named Freddy Krueger. So, and I thought, oh, that was interesting, Freddy Krueger. And in a way, it kind of cemented the fact that it was someone out there, in my head. Okay, and that continued on. So this is 86, 87, 88. Now it's 1989, and now I'm a senior airman. Now I'm on Mobile 10. Now I'm a Mobile 10 leader, and this night in 1989, April such and such of 1989. Working Mobile 10, we had a brand new Airman Clave. And if I remember right, that was his first night, first week being a newbie, and first time I worked with him, first time he's ever worked post 6, ever, I believe. And so we got there, we take over the shift, now we're working, and post 6, I take Clave, we go up and have dinner, and we come back out, and because I would leave my my partner, so it was myself, and I had another airman with a military dog, and I left my partner there, and we went out to chow, and we came back, and I told Clave, I told Clave, listen, if you experience someone throwing rocks at you, I said, don't be too alarmed. Just if you see something, call me. If you don't worry about it. It happens all the time. It just happens all the time. So me and the MWD, the military working dog, we left the Airman Clave and went down. The access road is 5 miles or so from the main highway down the way. So I went down on patrol. I just went down and parked the side of the road, and when about an hour, maybe 45 minutes, it wasn't too long, Airman Claves comes through the radio, and he said, I'll never forget. He said, 6 to control, have Mobile 10 rendezvous. I have a unknown individual sight, or someone. I sighted someone that's unknown, or I saw something. He saw somebody, and me and the MWD. I won't say his real name. Anyway, so our plan was this, because we talked about this, and Mobile 10 would come up, lights are blaring, sirens are wailing when they would respond to this. And I'm thinking, you know what? The way I would respond if I was on Mobile 10, I would just inch up, cut the engine, cut the lights, because this old Ram Charger, you could just put it in neutral and just coast the way up. And I did that at about 150 yards of going up to the post 6. So the truck came to it, just stopped on its own. We got out, we clicked the doors, because there's nothing worse when you're big game hunting and your buddy slams the door when you're hunting. So you just click the door,
Yeah.
right? So the plan was this. The plan was me and the MW, the military working dog, we were going to come up, and if we saw the individual, we were going to challenge him. Which meant, you challenge him with just halt, and we're gonna take you in. And if and we weren't gonna wait. We were going to put the dog on him right away if he was gonna resist, whoever it was. So about 100 yards, we stopped the car and we just slowly walk up on post 6, which by this point was a brick and mortar, beautiful guard shack now. Airman Clave is on the outside because there's a beautiful little patio with floodlights everywhere. We had all the lights on, and I came up to Airman Clave, and first thing I noticed was the look on his face, like he saw a ghost. He was white. He was maybe going into shock. I remember looking at him saying, "Oh," I got creepy looking at him when I asked him, "What did you see? What's happening?" And he asked me for a cigarette, and I gave him a cigarette. Maybe I had one too. And he said, "Yeah," because looking up the access road, and there's a street, what would be like a large street lamp, a good 200 or 300 yards up the access road. So it's the lights illuminating down to the guard shack. Well, he saw a silhouette of an individual walking down the road, and it was silhouetted by the light further up behind it. And he noticed it walking down the road. And at some point, he turned on his lights all around, the floodlighting on top of this guard shack. And he said, as it was walking down the road, it looked at the shack into the light, and its eyes glowed red, is what he said. And this individual proceeded to walk from his left to his right, and some 25, 30 yards off the highway, there's a 6-foot chain link fence that runs along the entire access road. Well, he said that this individual walking down walked over the fence and into the pine trees, to this pine trees in the back, in that area there, and that's what he saw. That's when he called. Well, he told me that story, and I just had the goosebumps, the creeps. I remember looking at Airman. I'll call him Airman Dave. I'll call him Airman Dave. And looking at him, looking at me, we just didn't know what to make of it. And whatever plans we had were are out the window. I felt whatever plans we had before kind of like went out the window. So we're there for maybe a couple minutes, maybe, when we heard a call coming from that side of the woods where this thing walked in, and that's when it really just kind of really, for lack of a better word, it kind of freaked me out.
So was it like a scream, or?
It was very throaty. It was kind of shrilly. I'll try to make it right. I'll try to duplicate it the best I can because I never forgotten it. So we're there, and this is what I heard.
Oh, really interesting. Yeah, and it was like really loud, right? Like something
loud enough where it was no doubt that there's something. I don't remember being overly loud, but that area is pretty wide open. But it was definitely loud enough where I could hear this thing vocalizing. I could hear the shrill letter from its tongue or from its vocal cords, but it was definitely never heard anything like that before in my life, and that really freaked me out.
So then, what did you guys do afterwards?
Well, I stuck around with Airman Clave, and it's funny. Airman Clave and the MWT. I didn't want to give his name, but yeah, it was Airman Clave. But no, I stood there for about an hour and a half, and nothing ever happened after that. And I stood there to keep him company until he got his color back. I remember he was white as a ghost and was very nervous. I mean, I couldn't just leave him. And then it was his first night working post 6. It may have been his first day in with my flight. He was brand new, right out of tech school and leave. And to think that in all the time that I spent on post 6, all those years where it went from the Caterpillar to that little shack to the big brick and mortar. I mean, it was just secondhand to us. It happened maybe not every time I worked, but it happened long enough, and that it was just a normal thing. We never really thought anything of it.
To have like stuff thrown at you as you're on post from the wood lines, right? Because if I understand, like there used to be a bunch of brush and trees all around you guys in like the 80s there.
Yes. So across the highway to my right, as I look down the access road, there's a motor pool parking lot, and to my left, as I'm looking down, is just open range where this thing was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I remember when we had this discussion before that sometimes there actually used to be snowballs when there was snow around thrown at you guys.
That's right. In the wintertime, there'd be snowballs thrown at us, and I definitely remember it snowing pretty heavy, and cars are coming up to take out their ID, and I wave them through, and every now and then a snowball would come my way, and I was young, I was fearless, and I never I never felt threatened by it. I guess maybe because if they would have hit me, it would have been something different. And none of these anything ever thrown ever hit me. It was always around me, but not directly at me. But yeah, definitely that was interesting. When the snowball started coming in, and that was I'm thinking, man, whoever it is out there has this pretty tough people to come up.
That's pretty consistent too, right? To be
Yeah,
doing it over the last couple of years
in the
since
middle
you've
of
been
nowhere.
there.
Yeah, right. In the middle of
Yeah.
nowhere, up against one of the most tight, secured military installations in the world. Thinking back on it now, back then, I'm like, it's just
So
whoever. Unless he comes out, makes himself seen. It was just a normal thing every night.
yeah, getting like rocks and snowballs thrown at you. And you guys are well equipped, right? Like, I mean, what's like a standard like a load for a gear? What do you guys normally carry for like
Oh,
weapons and stuff?
when we got to when we took our shift and we went down in the armory, yeah, they equipped us with. I had an M16 with 160 rounds. When I got there, we still were using Smith and Wesson 38 special 38 specials, little 4-inch, beautiful guns with her. Some had wooden handles, and we had 3 clips or 3 strips at 6 shots each, and then we went to the 9 millimeters, and then we had 3 clips at maybe 15 clips each, 15 rounds each, and so no, we were definitely armed and ready to do what we had to do. We were pumped up, and I mean, more working there was an experience. It was you felt like you were doing some. You felt like you were part of something very big.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you have a whole mountain behind you with a whole base that can withstand a nuclear blast. You know?
Yes,
So
yes.
that's incredible. And like as you know, it's around like the same area, like the foothills where I had my experience too of the stuff being thrown at me. So that's why it's really exciting, to see like that same type of pattern of behavior is going on, you know, at one of the most, like a defensive installations on the planet. Like where you over a number of years were dealing with a similar thing, like during 1986 and onward.
Yeah, it took a lot of cojones to throw rocks at if to someone to go in and do what they did all those years. Oh my God, I couldn't have done it. There's no way.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there was no point. I mean, why would
But,
the
but it's
risk of
easy,
being?
right? Like when we don't know enough to just shake it off and be like, it's just people messing with us. It's
Yeah,
just people angry. It's just teenagers. I mean,
you're
that's the
risking your
exact same
life.
thing I did. Like when I got pebbles thrown at me, I was just like, it's just teens messing with me. You know, and it's not always the case. Yeah, I mean, especially over 3 years, right? Like for sure, it was like weird, but because it didn't it didn't pose a threat, it was just whatever, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now there was another post where I did get a little creepy, and that was at the other end. The entrance of the installation is such where it goes right through the mountain. And at the other end, at the other entrance or exit is another post, and it's rarely ever used by. It's just us. We will go in there merely to test the alarms and such. And
Yeah,
we were posted there doing exercises for 12 hours. We had 12-hour shifts, and I spent a couple 12-hour shifts on that other side of Cheyenne Mountain. And what I remember back there was that the woods were very thick and dark, and the pine trees were like they were much larger type of trees, and the canopy provided a real darkness to these woods at the middle of the day, because it was just
yeah,
dark. The sun didn't penetrate down to the ground. It was just dark. And I remember spending a couple 12-hour shifts out there and then having like a little creepy feeling. I mean, that I don't think I ever felt creepy aside for this night over at Post 6 until that night, but never had that creepy that creepy feeling. But yeah, definitely
Like
had it
you're
back
being
then.
watched or something?
No, I got nothing ever thrown at me over there.
Yeah.
I never heard anything. I never saw anything. It was just definitely quiet. Definitely remember back there being very silent because you'd hear the birds and this and that, and like working midnight shifts and seeing the sun come up. You would hear the birds wake up and,
Yeah.
But back there, yeah, it was just quiet and kind of made the woods also made it quiet, but it was just creepy back there.
Yeah. Yeah, because that area, right? Like, if I understand correctly, there's a really big hallway that curves around the mountain to the secondary exit, where that area is that you're talking about. And the reason it curves like that is if the nuclear bomb does go off, that shaft in the mountain is going to take most of the blast and just push it all the way back out again. And the base that's on further in is going to be safe.
Yeah, so I separated in June of 1989, and December, I remember I called the station just to check in with some friends, with some old friends, and I knew the number, so I called, and yeah, my buddies were still working there, and uh, we were we got to the point where I asked them, "Hey, how is the Airman Clave? Airman Clave working at Post 6 that night?" And I was very surprised to hear that they told me that 2 months after we joined, which 2 months from that point, from that night, he was discharged from the Air Force, and I caught that. I was very surprised to hear that. Kind of unfortunate. He was a good, straight up kid from the Midwest somewhere, and very well behaved, what I remember. But thinking back on it, Mateo, all those years that we spent there, myself and the other two flights, because it was manned 24 hours a day, I never heard of any sightings, just dumb rock throwing and snowball throwing, and that it would take Airman Clave to see this thing. His first night on Post 6, brand new out of tech school, fresh in the military, and poor Airman Clave. I thought it was ironic and maybe not too positive for him that he had that experience the first night.
Yeah. Like unfortunate beginner's luck.
Beginner's
Bad
luck.
beginner's luck.
Yeah, why, having, I never really thought about if I wish it was me instead of him, but thinking back on it right now, I don't know. It would have changed me completely had I laid my eyes on it for sure. Because
Yeah.
I still held on to a certain naiveness to the outdoors, even to that point, because it was so strange that like you told me before, I just put in the back of my head. I mean, for some reason, whatever reason, I didn't write a report. I had every right to write an incident report, but I didn't because what was I gonna write?
Yeah.
You
Now
know?
I hear you. It's just like if you can't categorize it, and it's just like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do with that information? Like the last thing you're probably going to do is tell your command, because they're probably just going to tell you like you're an idiot and just go away. At least that's my experience in the military. So
Well,
I
thinking
can only
back, it would
imagine.
have, could have, should have, but if I would have made a report, who knows what would have happened. But for some reason, I had no intention of writing a report on it. But everybody in my flight knew. I mean, I told everybody, and Clave told everybody. So that's where it started and ended. As
Did
far
you
as
was Clave able to give like more details? I know it was like at a distance, but so like the eyes like reflected red, or like they looked like they were red in the light, or how did that work?
he told me that this thing, as it looked at the shack, and his words, if I remember correctly, were the eyes glowed red.
Okay.
The eyes glowed red. And how far up from the? Oh, at least 50 yards if I remember trying to put this together. Maybe at least 50 yards. It was quite a ways from the shack. It wasn't right upon him, but definitely what caught my attention. Yeah, the eyes red, kind of. Oh, my skin started to tingle, And then when he said this thing walked up to and walked over that 6-foot chain link fence, whoa, that was
Like it was nothing.
like it was nothing. Like it was nothing. I just did. Personally, I didn't know what to make of it. Oh, but having um, seen Clave white as a ghost affected me. So that got me, that, yeah, what did you see? It feels like you experienced something. And then hearing this thing shrill out the way it did. And I remember thinking, what is that? I remember listening, and it lasted for 4, 5, 6 seconds. And
So it's actually kind of a while. Like that's
yeah,
kind of a long call
yeah,
out. Oh.
yeah. It was like I had a big question mark inside of me when I was listening to it. It was, what
is that?
Yes, what exactly? I mean, I was trying to wrap my head around what Clave just told me. When now I'm listening to this thing, and it's what it was just really creepy. It was definitely creepy. I looking at the airman with the military working dog, and looking at looking at his face, into his eyes. We knew we were, because we talked about jumping over the fence and running whoever this person was going to be down. That was one of the options. We were going to jump the fence with the military working dog and then go after him and sick the dog out. But that was out the window.
Because at that point, right, you were still telling yourself, that's a person. It has to be a person. It's a weird account. But then after like that noise that you heard going from the direction where this being went, that's when you realize like that might be something different.
Yes, because remember, I've experienced 3 years of this up to that point, so I was very motivated to crack open, to see who this was, kind of solve the mystery, and I had a game plan, and me and but no, at that point when we heard that shrill, we looked at each other, and no, we're not going over that fence. We're not gonna sit there and sick the dog. And this overall just creepy feeling just sinking in it, with a big question mark, like, what? It's not making sense. It's not making sense, And funny, I didn't want to think Bigfoot right then and there. It wasn't like right in front of I wasn't thinking it. I was just trying to kind of just rationalize what was going on.
Yeah. When did you think maybe that's what was going on? Or like it took like over the years, or when did it start like dawn on you that might have been a Bigfoot or Sasquatch like creature?
Well, yeah, I mean, right after it happened, yeah, I heard of Bigfoot. Absolutely, been living down here in Southern California, and I remember watching the news in the early 70s, and someone had hoaxed someone being kidnapped from a picnic ground up in Crystal Lake here in the San Gabriel Mountains, and I remember hearing that on the news. Like, oh, what? And then watching the Patterson Gimlin film in The Chariots of the Gods, I think it was. The Chariots of the Gods, that movie, big screen movie about just mysteries, and they had the Peterson Gimlin footage, and so I saw that for the first time in the big screen, and that footage just speaks for itself, because when you lay your eyes on the footage, it I like to say that it passes the smell test. When you see something, instantly, oh, come on. No, but when you see this thing move, see this thing, yeah, it looks. It does not look fake. Doesn't look hoax. So, but I seen that. So I I did put two and two together like immediately afterwards, but it wasn't like a real big thing. It wasn't a priority for me to go back and investigate. I
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess it was easier for me to just put it behind me. Because this is April, I'm gonna separate in June. So at April, May, June, I had another less than 3 months before
Yeah.
I
I about to get
separated.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just enjoying the rank, being a senior airman. Having the privilege of working leads and some of these two-man teams, and that was a lot of fun. But no, I cracked that. I really wanted to get to the bottom of it. When I would tell Clay, if you see something, you call me. And I remember saying this over. I haven't. That wasn't the first time I said it. I would tell the regular my other guys on the post that don't call me if you get rock stone. I mean, call me if you see somebody. And
Yeah.
and I remember that saying that over and over. And Clay was the only one that made the call.
The only way at the very end of like your enlistment there.
Yes, yes.
Because so you and a few of the other individuals that were your colleagues, like you had wanted, this had almost become like a mystery over the years as to what on earth was going on, because it was weird, right? Like
Yeah, it was weird. Now, um,
it
just
wasn't like out of the realm of what people could do, but it was something that was fishy.
there was a certain normalness to this when I would think about, because I remember being on that post and that first shack they gave us. And I would take a little 4-inch TV, black and white TV, and yeah, I would turn on the TV in the middle of the night. And I remember watching Bigfoot documentaries in that little shack, facing downward on that access road. And yeah, I remember in the back of my head visualizing a Bigfoot walking across the road. You know, I guess just like when you're deer hunting and you visualize a big 7-point buck in the middle of a prairie,
Yeah.
but that never happened. I never saw it. Um, you asked me about whoops, and I remember hearing whoops, and I always rationalized that they were birds, that they were, because the sun would come up, and it'd be a beautiful sight as the sun was coming up and the base of Cheyenne Mountain, and it would at one point light up the granite walls, and it was really a sight to see, and
Yeah.
wildlife would come alive. And yeah, I would remember definitely, and I would think that they were mimicking birds for sure, because there was birds that whoop and then whoop whoop. But and you mentioned to me one time where I definitely remember hearing whoops and having snowballs thrown at me.
Oh, like almost like a connection, a correlation between the noise and then like an
Yeah,
action.
yeah, because
Interesting.
the noise was coming from the opposite, like to my left, and the rocks were coming from the other side. If I'm facing up, well, if I'm facing up, the sounds are coming from my left, and to my right is where the woods were. That's where the projectiles were coming from. But I definitely remember hearing the whoops and having snowballs thrown at me.
Would you look kind of like in the direction of the noise, and then the snowballs would come from the other side, or?
Yeah, I would. Maybe my eyes will wander over to what I thought was bird song, and my eyes maybe would wander on that side. And
And so was this during the day, or
yeah,
during the day and night?
it was no. This was in the morning at dawn, because I worked the midnight shift.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So it was like the perfect time where it'd be hard to see is when like You heard the noises and you got stuff thrown at you. These snowballs
Yeah,
in this case.
yeah. It was snowing, and if it wasn't snowing, it was foggy, and the cars were coming up real slow because it was snow on the ground. And
Yeah.
yeah, and here comes a snowball. I'm thinking, okay, and just doing my job, and but just yeah, I heard the whoops, and but no, never the thing never came out. I never heard any more shrills, just that one shrill. The creepy feelings came from the other end of the portal. Um, but this in the mid '80s, if you remember the TV show Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack
Mhm.
back then, he had one episode, and there's some irony here because I've never watched the episode because I was either working or whatever it was. I just never seen it. But there's a show with Robert Stack that they did up was I'm thinking it was Cripple Creek, but they had some sightings up there for sure. I remember there was a woman that claimed that she saw after her window on her front door was broken, she saw three figures walking down her street that were lit up by either the moonlight or some street lights. Um, and there was other and these were in the paper if I remember. And next thing you know, Unsolved Mysteries was up there filming a episode um, about Bigfoot at that time.
Yeah.
Well, this one year, my dad bought me a 30-30 because I'm gonna go with my cousins, join them for my first ever. No, that was the second year because I started hunting with my cousins. I used to make the drive over to Rio Blanco County from Colorado Springs, and it was maybe 4 or 5 hours. So
Mhm.
dad bought me a 30-30, and he came out, and then I bought the mounts and I bought a scope, and even bought me a bore sighter. So the plan was that I was going to go after being bore sighted, I was going to go zero it in. Well, one thing led to another, and maybe I waited to the last moment. I went, me and my buddy, a Cuban buddy of mine named Jose Santana. Excuse me. We would go. He took me down this road. We went down Manitou Springs, and I forgot the name of that little city, but we took Rampart Range Road into the hills from maybe 20 minutes from Manitou Springs, going in that direction, and another 20 minutes on this Range Park Range Road, and it was beautiful. And we went to fire our guns, and he took me. And I remember Dad got there one time, and he took me. Well, the plan was I was going to drive down there, take my 30-30, pace off 100 or 50 yards, and shoot at a paper plate or a target. Because the following week I was going to meet Dad at Rio Blanco and all my cousins. So I remember leaving Colorado Springs a little late, maybe right after noon. And that time of the year, the sun comes down really quick, maybe 5 o'clock.
Yeah, because the
5 p.
mountains are right there, so they just
Yeah,
blot out the sun real quick.
real quick in October. So I took my 30-30. I took a box of I had a box of 20 cartridges. I took my 357 and by myself, and I went up Rain Park Range Road up until I came across a nice little open field away from a good way from the road, and yeah, I put up a target and a pine tree, and I came back and I got in a prone position. It may have been like 50 to 60 yards away, and I figured at that point I should be able to hit something, and but no, I blew all the rounds on that box on that 30-30, and as good closest I got was the shots were centered, but they were really low on the plate, and they just started breaking the plate when I got done with those, and then I fired some rounds on my 357, just having a good old time, and back of my head I'm thinking as soon as it starts getting dark, it's time to pack up. I'm thinking, okay, so I had a little game plan. I'm having a good time for myself. Um, well, the sun uh, went down on the horizon and go, okay, I better go. And at this point, I remember being in the back of my Jeep, putting away my weapons when I a feeling of I need to get the heck out of there came over me. Like I need to leave now. Like from one moment to the next, this fear came over me that I needed to leave. And I'm a young guy and I'm best shape of my life, and I didn't fear anything at anybody at that point. And it was just a feeling that it came over me. And I remember hurrying up, and I had a cooler with some drinks, and I had food, but the point was I needed to drive away. But this feeling came over, and I need to leave. I need to leave. And sure enough, I put everything away. I turned on the Jeep, and thank God it turned on. And because I was a good 25 minutes to get back to a paved road. And then I still had another 15 minutes to get to town after that. But yeah, I drove out of there. But I've never forgotten that foreboding for this just is dark. Just yeah. There was no way that I was going to take my time when that came over me. It's like a sixth sense that you got to pay attention to, and I did. I go, I need to get out of here. But never forgotten that, and that was up Rain Park Range Road. And a funny coincidence. I'm going to mention 411 and David Paulides only because one of his stories from his original book was this older gentleman that was a family went up on that road and looking for minerals. And I don't have his name, I apologize, but the story went that the family dropped off this gentleman and they placed him on the ground because he had a hard time moving around, and he had his tools with him, and he was going to look for minerals in the ground. And they left him in the morning. They came back in the afternoon to pick him up when they arranged to have lunch, and they never found him or his tools. And I believe, on that same road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to look into that if it's up on Rampart Range Road or just up in that area, between us and Denver.
Please do. You be careful, but it's in his first book. Yeah, you go ahead. It's in his first book, and that was creepy. I think when I read that, that's because I picked up that book years ago when it came out because being an outdoorsman, and I read that and that really hit home with me. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I know people that eventually they're willing to do interviews and talk about that up by a Rampart Range, especially by the reservoirs.
Yes.
They've had encounters, experiences where they've been kind of chased out with big rocks being thrown into the reservoir.
You know what? I think about this. There's a reservoir up there that I used to fish, and I wouldn't think nothing of packing my Jeep and going on my own. So like you do now.
Yeah.
So I remember being at on Rain Palm Ridge Road, and I got to a reservoir, and the water. I remember the water being cold and blue, and there was really windy up there, and they had waves, and the water didn't look like it wasn't inviting. But I did some trout fishing there, and I don't think I ever caught anything there really. But I remember feeling like I had being watched on that reservoir. Yeah, never saw anything, but I definitely remember a feeling of being watched. And at that one, I don't know if I forgot the name of the reservoir, but it was I remember the water being deep blue and with waves because it was really windy.
Was it a big reservoir?
Yeah, it was a good size.
Yeah, that's probably Rampart Range Reservoir then. There's a bunch of smaller ones further down, but the main one is Rampart Range Reservoir.
Yeah, it was the first one. I didn't even know there was any more. Yeah, that was the first.
Yeah, the other ones are really small, so you would be able to see easily. So, do you have any other stories that you thought might be attributed to a run-in with this
Well,
hominid?
going back to my big game hunting seasons, I spent 20 years deer hunting, deer and elk hunting in Rio Blanco. As I pretty much where my cousins would hunt, and now they're, may they rest in peace. But they showed me the spot, and I got to know it almost like the back of my hand. But one one time, I did come across some tracks, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you. When you go up at these hunting grounds on the highlands, it was mainly wide open, and at the bottom of these, no one even real deep uh, ravines, but like little fingers, and at the bottom it would be kind of soft, wet gravel, that orange dirt, right? That was out there, but it was a little softer down there. One year, I came across these footprints, and I remember. Now I wasn't a. I could tell deer tracks, but I wasn't really well versed on this, because I know it's a whole art reading footprints. But I came across these footprints, and they were small, but they were long, and they were kind of thin. And I remember that the footprint was started on the outside of the foot, and then the toes, and then it went up like this. You know what I mean? Like the foot
Yeah.
came down, and it
Mhm.
kind of hooked around the outside of the foot, and then it was, anyway. That was interesting. But no, the one of the experience I had wasn't there. Was in I think it was Route County, and we were hunting elk out of Meeker, Colorado, up from the Rio Blanco River. We've never been there before, but we wanted me and my then buddy, we were looking for elk. And where we're gonna go? Let's go up here, up by the White River National Forest. So we pulled over, and then we went on the third season in November, because where it's even colder. So we got there, and it took us like 3 days to get there because they had problems with this big toy hauler. But we got up there, and there was a road coming out from the White River, and going. I'm thinking west, northwest from there. Not for a good. We just drove until, because we knew it was all public land, until we came across this little valley, this little rim. We went over a little rim there, and a valley kind of opened up below us, and then it just continued up. And we pulled the RV over there. We pulled over, and the first few days we came down into the valley, and then we would go up, and we went up for a good 2, 3, 4 miles, and these fingers were coming down the mountains, and some of these fingers were laden with pine trees, and you could tell they didn't get a whole lot of sun for whatever reason. That end of that finger coming down was just loaded with dark um, pine trees in there, and it was kind of muddy and soft down in there. And I remember having to walk through there to get out to the prairie to keep on walking up this big what would you call that? A gorge? Not a gorge, just a big canyon. But little canyons spilling into it. But walking in there, the ground was real soft, and it was cold because the canopy didn't allow the sun to hit. And I remember definitely feeling a little creeped out going through there. But once you walk out of there, you forget about it. So we made a plan, me and my buddy, to come back the third day and travel another however more miles it was to reach the point of this mountain that was in front of us. And we said, we ought to go on top of that mountain, and let's do that the next day. So we went there, and we had some weather was coming in that day. So we got up at 5:30 before, as the sun was coming up. We were on foot that morning. And it took us a good 3.5 to 4 hours to get to the base of that mountain. that big, not real big mountain, but at the base of that mountain. And we went up, and we had to get on all fours to get up. And but once we got to the top, it kind of leveled off. And
Oh, like almost like a plateau up on top.
yeah, it was like a little plateau, and it was. I remember looking around, and it was like a primeval forest that's never been touched. I mean, it was
Beautiful.
yeah, like they didn't know the time was nothing. It was however nature intended. It was the way it was, and we came across a nice little open area, like a little park, and I would call it a park where the trees just stand and you just have grass on the ground. And we were now it's maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock, and we've been on foot since 5:30 when we just walking uphill. And my buddy says he's gonna go continue walking around. I'll see him down. You could almost tell they're down the. You could tell one of the game trails that was up there. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna relax right here, because I took a seat on a log, and I'm in front of this bowl, this little park, and imagine like I'm at like 6 o'clock on the clock, and it's just right around me. And so I put my backpack down and I cracked the beer, and I'm just relaxing because I'm on vacation. You know, I'm big game hunting. That's what I do on vacation. So I crack a beer and I have a cigarette, and I'm taking it all in. I mean, the birds chirping and the squirrels cackling, you know, and when I noticed that all the wildlife just, all the birds and the squirrels just went silent. And I was a little surprised, but it wasn't the first time I experienced something like this. But I was just taking it all in. I was sitting down, but I put my weapon down, my hunting rifle right beside me. It wasn't on me, just had it right beside me, and I had my gear on the floor. And I could hear the heartbeat of my heartbeat. It was so dead still. And when I hear what I could describe now is like Darth Vader breathing. Darth Vader.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I remember, and it went on for a good spell, because I remember thinking to myself, like, what? And you know, being maybe I had my guard down a little bit, because I was thinking for a moment that it was elk, but all I had to do was rationalize, because elk don't do that. You know, that's not their MO. They skedaddle as soon as they hear you. They're down the mountain, and if you spook them, and that might be a different story. But yeah, so I heard this breathing, and I'm thinking to myself, what the? I'm just listening to it, because in a way it was like, what? So I'm just listening to this breathing, and the next thing I know, I feel and hear footsteps, and I could feel them through the ground, like tremors through the ground, like. And like if you ever come across like even like a big elk will do it, because I come across elk, and when those hooves come down in a big animal, you could hear it, and you could almost feel the concussion on the ground. Well, yeah, I could feel the tremors through the ground as it was footsteps were hitting the ground, and that's when it startled me right there. I grabbed my gun, and I swoop around, and I didn't see a thing. Did not see a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience where you're like, I just heard it right there. I should be able to see it.
Yeah.
There. Yeah.
And whatever it was really close to me, because I could hear this thing breathing in air and out.
If you were to guess how close, like you heard the breathing from, how close would you say? Like if you just gave like a guess, like around like 30 feet, 15 feet, you know?
No, I think it was less than that. I think it was less than 20 feet for sure.
Somewhere, yeah, like really close by, like basically right there with you.
Right. And some of these trees were would take up to, if you had men arm to arm, some of these trees would have taken up to five men around. There were some ancient trees in there, and
so there's a lot of cover and concealment too, all around.
A lot of covering, yes, and the grass went up to past my knees, and if it wasn't,
oh wow,
yes, and like I said, it looked like primeval forest, and so yeah, that startled me, and it didn't give me a fearful feeling. It just caught me by surprise, and I really expected to see, like a rack of a big bull elk running away from me, but no, I didn't see a thing. But interestingly enough, right after that, I met up with my buddy, and we came across these stumps. And what was interesting was these stumps were, when you looked inside these stumps, and they were on a real steep grade. I remember thinking it was at least 15-degree grade, and we had to be careful because the ground was so wet on that area. But we came across these stumps, and when we looked in, it just reminded me like a big bathtub. Because I looked in, and it was nothing but wood shavings, and it looking down at it, it really looked like something was using this to lay down. And there was two of them. They were right beside each other. And but I didn't have Bigfoot in my head. Now maybe I would have looked for hair samples or this or that. But no, I found that kind of curious. I found that really curious, though.
Yeah, that's a very interesting story. Yeah.
And that was on that same day. And another strange thing happened to me that day. The storm came in, the weather came in, and we had to get back to camp because it was snowing and it was windy, and some of the rain and sleet, and my buddy was in better shape than me, and he was down there, he was traveling, he was still hunting, and I got to a certain point on a hill where I had this feeling of, and I was in pretty good shape, I thought. I felt like I was going to pass out from one moment to the next. And it wasn't the first time this happened to me, but it happened to me that day, right after I saw those stumps. And I'm walking away. I'm walking up this hill to get back on the trail, to get back to the trailer. And yeah, from one moment to the next, I felt nauseous. I felt short of breath. I felt like I needed to lay down and go to sleep. Check that out.
Interesting. So almost like those encounters where people think they've experienced like some type of infrasound, like those.
Yeah. And I think personally, I took it like maybe I had a high cholesterol, or maybe I'm out of shape. But yeah, there was and the first time I felt that wasn't the first time, and I didn't lay down when I was snowing. I just took a deep breath, and I just moved out of there as fast as I could, and I got back to camp, thank goodness. And man, that was a rough day, because when hunting at a new spot that you don't know, and that late in the year with weather like that, it was difficult. It was.
Yeah, especially if there's like snow or a ton of deadfall, like new terrain you have to like recon. Yeah, I can imagine.
As a matter of fact, my buddy who had a four-wheeler came across someone that was lost during this trip, and he lost phone. There was no phone service up there back then. This is this is 2008, when President Obama was elected for his first term. Actually, I think it was that week. He came across somebody that was lost. Basically, he saved his life, because he had no phone service, and it was late in the day, and at night, at that area, it was below freezing at night up there.
Yeah.
Yes.
That person is lucky.
So in 1998, I'm hunting my old spot, and we would get off the road and we would just put a good 50 to 75, 100 yards between us, and we would just walk down into these canyons and see if we could push things out and maybe take a stand, because it was in the afternoon, I remember. In the afternoon, I would take a stand more often. In the morning, we drive canyons. So, yeah, they dropped me off, and we all went our way. And it was a beautiful, warm day. It wasn't even cold that time of that year. It was beautiful weather. When the first time that came over me, I felt that. I felt nauseous. I felt like lightheaded, short of breath, and then I needed to lay down. And let me tell you, I lay down. I literally lay down on the ground, looking up in the sky, taking deep breaths. Yeah, and I was, and I remember I got up and kind of shook it off, and I felt a little strange that day. The next morning I was okay, but I just rationalized that it was me in bad shape, maybe high triglycerides or high cholesterol or something. But
yeah, trying to find a way to explain like
yeah,
how it just came over all of a sudden.
yeah, and I never thought about that. I never thought about that much after that. I think I may have gone to the doctor and had another checkup done and such, but when I had the second incident, that was in '98. This is in '90. So there was like a couple years between there. What other strange? Never saw anything when I was out there hunting. Never. I heard the whoops. I remember hearing whoops for sure. I remember walking inside of ravines, walking up, because more normally that was the easiest place to walk, and maybe not the most advantageous place to be hunting, but I would walk up into these fingers and we come up on these plateaus, and that where we would be hunting, and everything kind of washed down to Peons Creek. If you ever look down on a map, it's right out of Peons Creek, and we were up Collins Gulch, and Mobile Company was out there blazing new roads for they're pumping gas from shale and rock, even fracking. They're doing fracking up there. But yeah, I spent a good 20 years there, a couple years in Meeker. One of my buddies, Danny, this young kid, he saw what he thought was a bear. And I remember asking him, "What did you see?" He said he saw a bear, but he said the bear, this dark figure, was moving back and forth. Like it was moving back and forth. If you can imagine somebody standing, then you put your weight on your left side, then you put your weight on the right side, and you kind of rock back and forth. That's what he saw. But no.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he saw that, and that was down towards coming down the hill from toward Peons Creek, because everything washes down to Peons Creek. My cousins would say, if you ever get lost, just go downhill and you're gonna hit.
You'll find civilization. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So have you ever any other like things that you can think about?
Well,
occurred?
I'll tell you an interesting story, a mountain lion story. I'll tell you. One year and it's kind of ironic, the year that I introduced my buddy to hand and arm signals, sometime in the mid '90s, and so we're running a canyon. And he's in one flank and I'm on the other flank. And if you could imagine, there was only 3 of us that year. And when my cousins would go, they had up to 15, maybe more, and they were better equipped to run these canyons. But we were going to run this canyon with 3 of us, me and him, and his son took the truck down to the bottom, and he'd take a stand. And both flanks, me and my buddy will walk down, and I could see him a good 150, maybe 200 yards away in the other flank. And I came across a patch, what I call buckbrush. And I had a choice of either walking up a couple hundred yards or going through the buckbrush. And I decided to go through the buckbrush. So I'm making my way through the brook, and this stuff is so thick. And this time of year, there's no leaves on it. It's just almost really thorny. It just grabs at your clothes and pulls them off of you. And I remember I dropped my dad's knife, may he rest in peace, on this hunting trip, just going through this buckbrush. And I couldn't see 5 feet in front of me because it was just so thick.
Yeah.
So I heard some rattling, I heard something up above me. And being that we're hunting deer, I'm thinking, oh, it's a deer. Oh, it's a deer. And but I have hand and arm signals that I taught my buddy Mike. So I catch his attention and I tell him there's something, I hear something right above me. And I can see him looking, and he puts his gun up, and I crouch down because it looks like he's gonna shoot at something. He takes a shot, and I could hear it hit the ground right above me. And then I see him moving. He's pointing his gun. And he takes another shot, and another shot, and that was it. I didn't yell at him after that, but I'm thinking, I didn't know what to think. I'll just ask him when we come out the other end. So he came out the other end, and I asked him, "Hey, Mike, what happened? What did you see?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I put the gun up, and I had you in my sights, in the field of vision in my scope, and you had a mountain lion right above you, and I had you both in my field of vision on my scope. And this thing was just merely feet away from me to pounce on me. And if it wasn't for me teaching him, ironically, hand and arm signals that day, that saved my life."
Yeah. I mean, it's not every day you like point your rifle at someone, but in that situation, you know, like it's like saved your life.
Yeah, you never know when you're out there in the woods. I mean, this is their home. I'm just there. Although I did spend a lot of time, but that was, I'm just a guy. And these are wild animals. They know the terrain. They know cover and concealment. And then I was on vacation, so I may have been not as sharp, as I could have.
A little complacent, just enjoying the.
I'm just happy to be there. I just want to relax, have a cold beer, have a vacation as I'm hunting, and I had a wonderful time. But I would say that if I would have seen, if getting back to Airman Clave, I'm thinking about that now. If that would have been me laying my eyes on this thing, I think it would have changed me completely. And you hear people say that it just changes their outlook in the woods. When I still kind of kept that naiveness in me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get it. I've been there where I just kind of try to ignore like the weird stuff, and because I didn't know where to put it, even though like weird, like stuff that was just really hard to explain what happened, and it wasn't until I kind of couldn't deny anymore of that these hominids existed that I had to do something about it. But I didn't at first, right? Like I still tried to deny it. I still tried not to think about it, and it just haunted me for a while until I did something about it.
Yeah, because you would go up there with your girlfriend and just park and have a good time, huh?
Yeah. Like when the first encounter occurred, we would just go to the same place every single night, and I knew the area well, right? And so when pebbles started getting thrown at us, I just assumed it was people.
Yeah, you were looking for it. Now there was another time on I don't know if you're familiar with I think it's Old Stage Road.
Yeah, Old Stage. Very familiar with that area.
Okay, so me and my buddies will go up that road, and then beautiful views because it opened up, and I remember we would park, and there was this little canyon, and you could see the whole city from there. And we would go up there and just blow guns, or we would fire our guns. And I remember there was a mud hole that would happen when it would rain. And I would take my Jeep and go through the mud hole. But one time I went up by myself, and it was in the wintertime. and I just wanted to go up and spend an afternoon out in the woods by myself, and I guess I enjoyed doing that. And I took a couple beers, and I got to that one point where I pulled over to the right, and there was a beautiful view coming down, and you could see the city. And as I pulled in, and there was snow on the ground, and when I went, there wasn't snowing then, but it had snowed recently, and there was inches of at least 6 inches on the ground. But I had my Jeep, and I had no problem getting around. But I parked this Jeep, and when I was leaving later, I had driven up on a snowbank, and the wheels were spinning when I was leaving. But I had a shovel, so I was down there digging out this Jeep. When I did have a creepy feeling. I was by myself, and but the creepy feeling was that I had to hurry up. I remember, as I was digging this Jeep out, all of a sudden I had an urgency to dig this Jeep out.
Yeah.
I never saw or heard anything, but I think I fired my guns, and but that was up Old Stage Road, and I know there's BFRO. There's some BFRO reports coming out of up that road.
Oh yeah, and actually, like on the south side of Pikes Peak, where Old Stage and High Gold Camp Road intersect back there, that's where a lot of documentaries, like with Monster Quest and other places, have been filmed over there because so many sightings have occurred in that area.
I did see that episode. Yeah, they were up in Colorado, and I think the theme of the episode was kills or game kills that they were finding up there. But that's a lot of area up there. But you're there right now.
It's vast. Yeah, I go up there a lot. I've camped out there exploring for weeks at a time. I'm definitely familiar with the area, but there's still so much more area to explore because it's so vast and rugged.
I have another hunting story, another hunting experience I had, and this is out here in California. When I would come back from my hunting trip, me and my buddy would some years we go and we get another deer tag for here in Southern California to hunt the San Gabriel Mountains right above LA. And he took me up by Mount Wilson, and for those of you that are familiar with LA, and you take from La Cañada to take the 2 up into the San Angeles National Forest, I think it is. Yeah. And so we were up there. He took me up there. We were deer hunting, and it's rough hunting. The only flat place to hunt is on top of these ridgebacks on these trails. Other than that, you're either going uphill or you're going downhill. And every year, people go hiking, and they end up in a spot where they can't get out, and they rescue people out of it all the time because the ground is just full of loose rock, and the footing's not very good. It's really rough. But we and my buddy went up there, and I remember he said he saw a mountain lion. I didn't see him. He said he saw it, and that was during the weekend. But I still had another week on this tag that was still valid. So I got home because I live only, I would say, an hour and a half to that spot. When I live here in Azusa, California. I got home about 3 o'clock, or maybe 2, and I know I only had a couple hours to hunt, and I drove up there. I got into my spot, and it's so thick, the shrub, that you pull over off the road, and there's these game trails, and there were like tubes going in the brush, because there were game trails, and it was almost like little tunnels made by game. And you take these little tunnels and you come up on the top of these mountains. And I picked a tree that I would climb up on, a pine tree, and I would just hang out. And there was game trails, one hiking trail, and there was some game trails. And that's why I would just kick back and see if I see anything. Well, this one time, as I was leaving, and the sun was going down, it goes down real quick that time of year. Um, I'm in the, I guess I call them tunnels. I'm working my way back to the car, and I would hear footsteps, or I would hear footsteps as I'm walking. And then I would stop, and I would hear one or two more steps, crunch, crunch, or maybe one more and stop. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's that mountain lion that Mike saw. Never saw anything, but it was interesting that every time I was going through these tunnels, as something I was being flanked by something for sure. And
Yeah.
I would stop and it would stop. Yeah, and that kind of creeped me out. Absolutely.
I imagine. Yeah, I'd be creeped out too.
Yeah, I mean, I have my sidearm and I have my 30-06, but nonetheless, I'm still feeling kind of vulnerable, like you say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course, like you're in a place where like you can't see, but you know something's around, and not only that, like it's clearly like mirroring you and flanking you as you move.
Yeah. And because you could tell a bipedal animal from a quadruped, you hear an animal on four.
Yeah. Yeah. You can definitely hear like the difference between something on four legs versus
Absolutely.
two.
And I don't ever seen deer kind of flank me or stalk me down, but mountain lions I have.
Yeah. Well, if you've heard the difference, then you know like that if there's a difference between the two, like you
Yeah.
have that experience.
Oh, absolutely. I've heard elk and I've heard deer run from me, and elk and deer, when you're out there in the wilderness and you see these animals move, they move with such ease, going up these these hills and with no time flat, and big animal. I've seen elk go up, just run up areas that I had trouble going up, and then like nothing flat for them.
Oh yeah, they're definitely developed and you know conditioned for that environment.
What else can I say? I think I may have covered just about everything.
Well, hey man, Joe, that's fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this and sharing like these experiences and encounters, and just stuff that just was seemed weird that you couldn't place that might be attributed to this hominid. Uh, for anyone that's interested, Joe has his own YouTube they started called The Guy Show, and I'll actually link it down in the description. He's an awesome like a chef. He does the cooking, and he's even like considered maybe talking about like a Sasquatch type topics as he does his cooking show. So I say check it out. You might like it. Do you have anything to say about that, Joe?
Well, it's a new channel. I just started it April of last year, and my intentions were to. I'm a chef, so to somehow incorporate my cooking, but also I call it the guy show because it's really stuff that I like to do. I'm the guy, I guess. So I wanted to have some golf vlogs and some camping, some fishing, some outdoor stuff. Because to this day, I still love the outdoors. And yeah, and talking about cryptids. And to this day, I haven't. All that's on there is just cooking stuff. But I may, yeah, I may just share some encounters with folks from somehow incorporate that into my channel. But it's a lot of fun. It's a hobby, and whether I make money or not, I think doesn't really make a difference. I just like to share my knowledge.
Well, awesome, Joe. Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing. I hope your channel, you're able to share with a lot of people and like make everyone hungry.
Yeah, like you say, maybe I'll read off BFR reports as I'm cooking something.
Yeah, there you go. All right, thanks so much, Joe. Again, I appreciate you coming on and talking about this, and I look forward to seeing where it goes.